Welcome back, everybody, for the second week in a row. You are joining us, the AFC Northcast. We are happy to have you. I am Joey, and I am joined tonight, as always, by Chad. What's up, buddy?
How's it going, team? I'm wearing my Mapletron t-shirt to celebrate a heck of a great draft pick because that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Football drafts, players that we love, players that we're going to be embarrassed maybe if our team takes them, all of the above. It's going to be awesome. Very excited. I'm so excited about the draft, and then it'll all calm down for like months. But
Yeah,
right now, peak excitement.
it'll all calm down until August,
Yeah.
basically.
And then we can start just like freaking out about unsigned free agents, undrafted free agents, six
Hell
round
yeah.
picks that we
I
think are
can't
going to
wait
crack
to
the
talk
starting lineup.
about. I can't wait to start a new undrafted free agent streak.
Yeah. Well, we'll see who's the better undrafted free agent team. I've got some good factoids for you
That's
coming
gonna
in
be
hot
lit
tonight.
on Sunday. So what you drinking over there, my man?
So excited about tonight's beer. I've got Hermit Thrush's Rye Barrel Rye because if I can't make smart conversation tonight, I can at least use my rye wit. This is a rye barrel aged, beautiful beer from Hermit Thrush. Yep, they're all sour. We talked about that last time. It's one of my favorite Vermont breweries. And if I finish that, which I almost certainly will, we're just going to go with classic. Long Trail Ale, highly drinkable. I like to keep a 12 pack of this in the fridge for when I get home from work. I run home from work. I earn it. I earn it. And to cool down in the summertime, have a nice light beer while I'm walking around the yard, picking up dog poop or weeding or whatever I do. So, what are you
Man
drinking?
stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
man chores.
I'm drinking another local Raleigh, North Carolina Lone Rider Brewing IPA called Hoppy Kaye, motherfucker, because the Ravens have the most picks in the first 3 rounds in the AFC North. The only team for now with multiple first round picks, and it's lit. Eric
I
DaCosta
hope you enjoyed as much as I'm enjoying this beer.
is
Wow.
gonna
Yum.
pants Andrew Barry in 3 days.
He's pretty good at drafting. I'd love to make fun of the Ravens, and I will do my best tonight. But it's pretty hard to make fun of their drafting. They're pretty good at it. I guess we'll bury the lead a little bit because the Ravens are probably the team with the biggest news, but we're not going to talk about the Ravens first. We're going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals because the Cincinnati Bengals have the first pick in the draft of the AFC North. They have the fifth pick in the draft, and everybody wants to know, Joey, who are they going to draft? Are they going to draft Penei Sewell, young 20-year-old offensive lineman? He can jump over trucks probably. He can lift those same trucks and throw them, and he can outrun the trucks. He's a pure athlete. He can play any position he wants. Or are they going to draft Joe Burrow's best friend? He's like lightning in a bottle. He unlocked the one thing that Joe Burrow couldn't do last year. He threw all those deep balls to Jamar Chase. It was perfect. It was chemistry. It was chemistry that you read about in romance novels. Or are they going to draft the guy that nobody talks about them drafting, but everyone agrees is the best actual player in the whole draft? Tight end, actual wide receiver, but tight end. Maybe it's his butt. I don't know. Kyle Pitts, Florida. What do you think, Joey? What's going to happen?
I think that they should go with Sewell. Um, it's shaping up like there's enough movement above them that like the quarterbacks are the real coveted pieces above them, and it it seems like more and more likely that Sewell won't go before them. And Joe Burrow took like a zillion sacks last year, so you got to shore that up. Um, but either way, the focus is as it should be around Burrow. You know, they addressed the secondary with some vets in the off season, and they get to focus on the offense, and that's exciting if you're in Cincinnati. Even if you draft Sewell, which is like the least flashy, like it's still an exciting pick.
Did you
I
watch Sewell at all? Did you watch our obligatory 4 to 8 minutes of highlights per player?
no,
Oh,
I watched
Joey!
no highlights in preparation for this
At all?
at all.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'll be the
Life is
guy that knows
busy.
what he's talking about.
I've got some stats for some things, not for these guys.
I get it. You're about to get your MBA, which is what most of these players get, which means it obviously is really hard to do. So here's what you got to like about Penei Sewell. He's huge. He weighs 330 pounds, which is really big, even for an offensive lineman. And he's just really gifted in space and moving. So when you watch him pass block, he just like, it doesn't look like he's even trying at all to mirror the edge rushers that he's playing against. And as you and I all know, as AFC North fans, like edge rushers are fast and strong and they lean with their like knees or ankles or whatever. And it's really hard to keep up with them for a big lumbering tackle. But he just never looked like he even had to try. Like he just didn't. And then similarly, on screen passes or any time that he can like get out in space, he's just like really good at getting to what we would call the second level and finding a linebacker. And sometimes big guys like him would have trouble getting contact because they're littler, they're smaller and faster, these linebackers, and they can dodge them. But he just gets there and then he tosses them. So he's just like really athletic and big at the same time. The only downside is he's just not a son of a bitch. Like he doesn't embarrass
Yeah.
people in a mean bullying way. And when you're that big and you're an offensive lineman, I think some people are looking for that. They want him to be like a little bit meaner. So basically, if you like nice people, he's perfect because he. The only flaw is like maybe he just is happy to just be better than you and to just block you for the whole play. He doesn't need to make you question yourself and if you belong.
He's like the anti Kalechi Osemele, who's just like a big angry human.
There you go.
There you go. Bones says, I think he's talking to me. He said, shotgun that beer. Um, I'm on my couch, and this beer's already open, but I will shotgun a beer for you on draft night, Bones. I promise. Even if we don't do a live stream, I will shotgun a beer for you to get ready for the draft, and I will put it on the page.
I mean, Bones, that's as good a promise as you're going to get from an old lame dad. I'm on my couch, Bones. I'm on my couch. Do you know?
I'm not trying to have those problems. This shit's on the internet. I can have no deniability.
I like it. I like it. Well, let's talk a little bit about I don't think I actually care who the Bengals draft. I think that they're in the most perfect position a team with only 4 total employees in their scouting department can be, which is they just can't screw this up. They just really can't. So we talked about Penei Sewell. He's awesome. He's going to just if he will step in and play a position on the Bengals lineup if they want to start their new tackle and Jonah Williams at tackle and put him in guard, he's going to be fine. He's strong enough. If they want to put him at tackle, he'll do fine there. Let's talk about Kyle Pitts. Everybody's obsessed with Kyle Pitts, except for the Bengals. That's the way it works. Every single team is obsessed with Kyle Pitts, except for the Bengals and the teams that need quarterbacks. So let's just say Atlanta doesn't take Kyle Pitts. Everybody thinks they're going to pick 4. Have you looked into his stats? Because I know you're too busy getting that really fancy MBA. Do you know anything about Kyle Pitts?
I watched him in the bowl game that
There you
Florida
go.
played in, like the rest of America. And that was the first time that I'd seen him. And yeah, like, he's a fucking baller. The big selling point for me for Pitts is how the tight end is kind of the young quarterback's best friend. As far as production in college, like, I'm not even as concerned with that. Like, he can catch. That's great. He's enough of like a physical freak that you're just like, well, like, as long as he can run like these little tight end routes, eventually he'll get chemistry with Burrow, and like once he does, they can run some option stuff and like be Joe Burrow's binky.
Yeah. The thing about him, and I learned this today while listening to the PFF podcast, which is Professional Football Focus. So they do a bunch of nerdy stuff. I figured you already know this since you're all into your stats and tables. Kyle Pitts' measurables, his testing for his pro day and all that kind of stuff, all of it was better than Mike Evans. All of it, like every test. So if you don't know who Mike Evans is, he just won the Super Bowl. He's a really good wide receiver, one of the best. Kyle Pitts is a tight end who at least seems to have all the tangibles, the measurables to be better than him at what he does. When I watched his highlights, at least 5-6 minutes, it's clear cut. I mean, he's a wide receiver. Like he's huge and tall. He's like Chase Claypool, but bigger and maybe faster. And he runs pretty good routes and he jumps over people. And the one thing that I noticed that was really neat, he gets double teamed a lot because he's like by far the best player on his team. And in the red zone, they throw it to him anyway because he's the best player on their team. He's like really good at making himself small and like working through double teams that are like, I noticed it in the red zone a lot where he'd like come back to the ball and try and work through multiple players. And I started to wonder if he's going to play tight end, he'll probably put on a little bit of weight and get stronger at block. And I just wonder if he'll be able to use his body the same way he does now if he puts on that weight. So my only question is like an incredibly nuanced, pointless question. It's because he's so good. I don't really understand why the Bengals don't want him a lot because I'm by far the biggest CJ Uzama fan. I think even of Bengals fans. Like I think I like him better than anyone. He played 2 games and missed the rest of the year last year. He's not great. And then they have Drew Sample, nice blocking tight end. Great news if you get a super gifted, ultra awesome receiving tight end. Bam, you've just unlocked all this sweet stuff. You know all about it with your Ravens stuff. Get your Boyle, get your Andrews, and then you've got everything you could ever want. So to me, the only mistake that Cincinnati maybe has made is that they didn't take that seriously, the idea of taking Kyle Pitts. And maybe they won't even get a chance if Atlanta takes him.
And maybe it's a smokescreen. I mean, it's deception season.
I can't decide if I'll be so excited or if I will panic.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fucking problem if the Bengals draft Kyle Pitts. And really, tackle is deep enough that, like, yeah, you're not going to get... Penei Sewell is, like, head and shoulders the best one, right? I think that's pretty much a consensus.
There's a few snippers that think that Rashawn Slater's really good, but they're just making
being
ripples.
Contrarians, yeah. But there's plenty of depth in that second spot, and we'll revisit that second spot because the Bengals needs, in a lot of ways, mirror the Ravens needs, and they're drafting in the same kind of areas. But not getting Penei Sewell is not like the death knell for the future Bengals offensive line. Like they can still get a solid tackle later.
Well, it's great that you brought that up because that brings us to the guy that we agree the Bengals are actually going to draft, Jamar Chase. Talk to me about why the Bengals are going to draft Jamar Chase and why it's either good or dumb.
It's a storybook ending for Jamar Chase and his best friend, maybe, allegedly, Joe Burrow. Warren says that Chase is the sentimental pick in the Cincinnati area. I mean, yeah, how could he not be? Like, you're reuniting Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase. Like, they lit it up won a natty. Jamar is considered, I'm pretty sure everybody kind of agrees that he's the number one wide receiver.
He had 1,700 yards and 20 touchdowns in a college season. He's a
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
He
On a
he
team
might
that
not have
had
even.
a lot of weapons. Like, it wasn't like he was getting everything. Like, they were spreading it around. Like, he was the number one, but yeah. Um, yeah. That would be crazy too. That's like move on from AJ Green, and then you have Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, um, T. Higgins, like, boom. CJ
Yeah.
Uzama, Joe Mixon, like, that's a solid little lineup you got there.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and it makes sense. He's got the chemistry with Joe Burrow. And again, I deep dived into Jamar Chase. Deep highlight dive for me on this one. And the things that Chase is expert at are all the things that we watched. He can catch an underthrown Joe Burrow deep ball with the best of them. Check it out. Go through the highlights. A lot of coming back to the football, and he's great at it. He can contested catch. He's strong. He gets separation from corners using his strength a lot. He's got pretty nice contact balance too. He's not like a crazy tackle breaker, um, but he also is strong enough that he can like fight through stuff, especially making the catch. He's got great broken play chemistry. You see a lot of that in the highlights. Clearly the play breaks down and he's working to the sideline or working back to the ball. So that's another thing you're going to want to see because, in the NFL, if you can make something big out of a broken play, that's huge. So he will be immediately helpful there. And if you didn't know, he's like super duper fast. So if he catches the ball, like nobody's going to catch him that is behind him. He's like really fast. But yeah, I mean, he catches underthrown balls, and that's probably what he's going to get from Joe. So he's ready. Like he's a good pick. They can't miss this. They cannot mess this up. They can take any of these three guys, and they have like an awesome, awesome football player. So way to go, Cincinnati. You did great scouting. You nailed it. Super good scouting. Really, really great. So we're going to every team. We're each gonna pick two players that we think the Bengals will take probably in the first 2 days of the draft. But it could be a player that could even slip that we just feel like really the team identifies with and could take. So I think we both agree that Jamar Chase is going to be one of those players. Do you have another player that you could really see the Bengals taking with either their second or third round pick? Oh, and by the way, this was lame, dude. I'll do better with other teams. The Bengals have 8 picks in this draft, and they have 1 each in the first 3 rounds. So that's relevant. Sorry. Wow. Should have probably said that earlier.
Um, I don't have anybody earmarked for them in the second round. But assuming they take Chase in the first round because like that's the sweet story. Like Leatherwood from Alabama. He's got some injury concerns. And so if he drops to them in the early second round, like there's a chance that because of injury concerns, you got the best lineman on the best O line in college football at the top of the second round. And it's a team need. And like, that's ideal, I think.
Alex Leatherwood. He is in a group of probably like 5 offensive tackles, depending on who you ask. I'm doing some quote fingers right now for the people that just listen. Um, he's a great option for the Bengals in the second round. I'm going to go probably beyond the second round because I couldn't figure out which tackle they were going to take, and I want to win. I want to get shit right. So I'm taking a little guy that's giant man by the name of Milton Williams. He's a defensive tackle. He's a little bit on the shorter side, but he had like a crazy pro day. He was jumping things. He was lifting things lots of times. He was going around cones faster than people could perceive with their stopwatches. And everybody's comparing him to Geno Atkins. And
Oof.
it just seems like Cincinnati loves him. He's got that Geno Atkins athletic profile. His let me see, I've got him pulled up here. He's from Louisiana Tech, the other school. So there is a lack of competition, into his resume, by guys that he played against. But he could be a defensive tackle, and that they could take in maybe the third round. That he's been kind of mentioned a lot with their team, him and Dallas. So Dallas would be the team that if they take him in the third round, that's the reason I got it wrong, not because I was wrong about Cincinnati liking him. Remember that.
With the nicest pick in the draft they have in the third round, 69th pick. Very nice.
Dallas?
No,
Oh
Cincinnati.
no, the Bengals. The Bengals, yeah. So Milton Williams is my second choice. Jamar Chase, Milton Williams, they will be Bengals.
Book it. Bet the farm.
Lock it in. Lock it in. Also, I wanted to mention this. I was reading a study from a guy named, I think his name is Jerry Holder. Larry Holder on The Athletic. And what he did, Larry, forgettable
It's
names.
like Parks and Rec. Yeah.
Yeah. So what he did is he looked at every draft from like 1970 or 68 or something all the way to 2018, and there's a metric called a weighted approximate value. I'm not going to tell you how they get to it. Just know that they're nerds, and they come up with a number that's how good a player was. And he determined every single time in a draft that a team took the best player available for all those years. And the Bengals have done it 5 times to 2018. So we'll see with Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and those guys. And it doesn't always happen a lot. Like if you think about the 2001 draft, Tom Brady was taken in the 6th round. So there's basically only one best player available because nobody was better than him before that. And then it was like an undrafted free agent that was the best. So there's only one best player available taken. Go Patriots, you suck. So yeah, and it was Geno Atkins in 2010. So they've done it 5 times. Be prepared to hear about some teams that have done it more.
Oh boy, that excites me. The draft prowess just revs me up.
You are very proud of your team's team building, and especially drafting with Newsome and DaCosta now. It's a point of pride, and I'm sure you'll be looking forward to hearing how the Ravens fared in this study.
You seem too chipper about it, though, so we'll see.
We'll see.
All right, so the next pick, so we'll have a little bit of time to stew on that Cincinnati pick because there's a big clump of AFC North teams, as you'll remember. They had 3 representatives in the playoffs, and the very first of those playoff teams to draft is the number 24 spot in the first round, Pittsburgh Steelers.
I want you to lead off on your thoughts on this first pick, but I'm going to go backwards one more time because I'm very much not organized with my thoughts. You can basically lock in that first round Bengals pick because a journalist named Malik Wright, I listened to him on the Bengals Locked On podcast. He's been nailing all their free agent stuff this year. He's been like the first one with the news. 95% chance that they take Jamar Chase from Malik Wright. So if you're really into the Bengals and you're on social media or on the internet, check out Malik Wright. He seems to be a good source of news. Steelers,
and
better
if it's
team.
wrong, it's not our fault. It's Malik Wright's fault.
No. He makes money on this stuff. We make less money. The checks are going to start rolling in.
That's right. So there's the Steelers draft prospects at this 24 spot are like all over the board for me. And I think kind of for everybody. There's many needs, but not many like dire needs. Offensive line, namely like center, tackle, like that's a need, and running back is a need. But I think like corner, depending on who is around, could be like
Yeah,
an interesting move.
Justin Lane just got a felony, so
Yep,
he was
that's not
he
great.
was supposed to compete. He's a third round pick. He was supposed to compete with an undrafted free agent named James Pierre for basically that third kind of main get a lot of playing time position, with Cam Sutton and Joe Hayden being kind of locked in ahead of them. And well, if you're in jail, you probably aren't going to compete a lot. So we'll see what happens with Justin Lane, idiot. Continue.
And then, Bud Dupree just left. And so, like, edge, it's a pretty nifty edge class in this draft. And so, like, Ojolari and some of these guys that are there. Tevin Jenkins, a tackle out of Oklahoma State, is a guy that's been talked about a lot for the Steelers. I think that would be a fine pick. I think he's got like barbed wire or like a tribal band tattoo. Love to see it. Love that. Yeah.
That's very. I mean, either way, I've never seen either of those. That's like, you don't see that.
Not anymore.
So
I didn't think tattoo artists were agreeing to do that anymore.
It's inspired. It's inspired. I love that.
But I'm going to go with a little more of a long shot, I think. And I am going to go with Georgia cornerback Eric Stokes.
In the first round.
Who I think will be a starter. Or Najee Harris. Sure, Najee Harris. There you go.
You can take him. I don't want to take you off.
Go ahead. Najee Harris.
I'm not peeing in your
Roll
Cheerios.
Tide.
Here's the thing. It's fun. It's fun to go your own way and be a rebel. and look, the Steelers, I don't have most of these numbers in front of me, but I tend to reference this guy named Gil Brandt. He does a top 100 list every year. And this is per Steelers Depot. They've been tracking his accuracy. He hits in his top 32 rankings. 80% of those players are drafted in the top 32. In his top 64, which would be the top 2 rounds, about 80% again are drafted in the top 64 picks, and about the same for the top 100. So he's pretty on it. Where he isn't on it is with the Steelers. So Artie Burns was like 99 on Gil Brandt's list. Jarvis Jones, I don't know. He was way back.
Oh, yeah.
Even TJ Watt.
Right?
Yeah, TJ Watt was in the 60s.
Idiot.
Look, not many people are going to argue that the Steelers are bad at drafting. But they do miss, and they don't seem to pay a lot of attention to Gil Brandt's top 100. So what I'm trying to sort of get at here is that they also don't pay tons of attention to conventional wisdom. And conventional wisdom says right now that drafting a running back is for dummies in the first round. Do you agree?
Yes, pretty much, yeah.
Why?
Because you could just wait. Running backs are, especially the Steelers' offense. So I mentioned last week that the Steelers seemed to be trending the way of like the Megatron era Lions, where they're just abandon the run game altogether. Connor's gone, like Snell. He's not like knocking your socks off for 3 rounds, like, or 3 downs. And you can get guys, you can plug and play running backs. Like Miami almost made the playoffs last year with some guy I've never heard of, and I can't even remember his name right now. And so, like, And it's not like and they don't have the passing game that the Steelers have. So, the only spot where that gets dicey is if we're looking at the twilight of Ben's career and planning for a young quarterback. It would be pretty rad to have a stud running back that can carry the load a little bit and help out your young quarterback.
What if I were to tell you that the Steelers have implemented that the running back position is fungible and you can draft one in the middle rounds to great success every year for the last 4 years? And then I were to read you these names from memory: James Conner, Jalen Samuels, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland.
My man.
Three of these players are still on the roster, and one of them was released. So it's not like you can just get a running back that is a good, great starter. Like you can't just do it just because
Right.
what's his face on the Saints came from the third round, Kamara. Like it doesn't just work that way, right? You don't just get a Pro Bowl player in the third round. Look, the Steelers have been doing it. Third, fourth round, every year. Dial it up. Running back. And they don't have the production. Like if you watch the players, like Jalen Samuels was this like tight end / running back, whatever. You know what he's gonna be? Not a football player soon, because he's probably not going to get another contract after he's not on the Steelers. James Conner, I probably was his biggest defender. I think that he's really good. I think he's probably a great third down back if he can just settle into that role for a team. Good pass protector, good pass catcher, great in the open field. A little indecisive in the backfield, which is a bummer when a lot of defenders are in your backfield. Steelers. Benny Snell, he seems like he might be a guy that can wear down a defense. Hasn't really been given the chance. And also, you need a physical offense to do that. And the Steelers don't necessarily play that. They're more technical pass protecting. And Anthony McFarland got like 2 carries and whatever. Nobody cares about him yet. He hasn't done anything. So it doesn't just work like that. That's my first case for taking a running back early or when you know you have a good one. Second case, you have an extra year of control. So everybody agrees that running backs are only going to play for 3 years, 5 years, whatever. If you draft them in the first round, you have the entirety of their career built in as affordable. So if you know they're going to be good, you can take their whole 5 years, and if they're really good, you can franchise them in the 6th year. And it's not a big deal because running backs aren't getting paid that much money. So it's not like franchising Bud Dupree for $18 million. It's like 11. So that's my other case. And the third one, Najee Harris is like 23 years old. So everybody's like, oh my God, he's an old man. He's going to need. Dude, if he's only playing for 5 years, presumably, he's going to be 28. Like, what are we freaking out about here? So what that all leads to, and we can brush over some other Steelers possible players, but it really looks like Najee Harris is going to be the player. The Steelers, Alabama had 2 pro days. If you follow the Steelers closely, Kevin Colbert, and not Colbert. I think it's Colbert. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name.
Colbert.
Whatever. I've never met him. Colbert, GM, Mike Tomlin, coach. If they're not at the pro day, extremely unlikely that they're going to take this guy as a first-round pick, which is why Tevin Jenkins is very unlikely. Not impossible. Cam Hayward is your one anomaly in the Kevin Colbert era of a player taken in the first round that they weren't at, both of them. So they were definitely at Alabama's pro day. And get this, Najee Harris drove 9 hours to get to it when he missed his flight or whatever, just so he could be with his teammates, even though he didn't work out at the first one. Then the Steelers running backs coach worked out Najee Harris at the second pro day. So it's like, I mean, this is a big deal. And here's the other thing that I'm going to say is why I think the Steelers almost have to take him. They're at pick 24. They're going to be choosing either, we talked about their positions in need, right? They don't have a third edge guy. So they're going to be taking, the 4th best edge player, third, fourth, and we'll probably talk more about edge. But let me just tell you this. Whoever takes an edge early in the AFC North, you need to be just like peeing your pants out of nervousness because these guys have big questions,
These guys
all
are
of them.
raw. Yeah.
Yeah, raw, injury prone, not productive, like all the questions you could ever have. They could take the sixth best offensive tackle. And most of these tackles, people aren't even sure they're going to be tackles. If you try to read about offensive linemen in this year's draft, it's hard to even figure out what list they're on because no one can agree what position they're going to play because all the tackles have 32-inch arms. Just so you guys know, that's supposedly too short. Seems pretty long to me. I don't know. It's just a mess, right? And they don't need a guard, right? They need a tackle or they need a center. Well, bad news, everybody. Centers aren't valuable, so all the centers drop. So they could take the best center, which, by the way, is a guy that ruptures his ACL literally every year. He either breaks his ankle or ruptures his ACL every single year. So,
and also didn't even play center in college.
Yes, he did. I'm talking about Landon Dickerson.
Not a lot.
He played center.
Freaking the other guy played center. Creed Humphrey.
He played for Oklahoma.
Oh man, I am mixing up maroon colors.
It's cool. Don't worry.
Look, man, I'm not Dane
If you'd
Brugler,
have watched all the highlights tonight, then you'd have had this shit.
Even if I watched all the highlights,
No,
I wouldn't
that's
know.
pretty clear.
Maroon team.
That's true. You'd be very confused. Anyway, or they can pick the best running back. You can get the best player at their position. The Steelers are going to take Najee Harris. It's almost locked in. So I'm going to tell you why he's good. He does every single thing. The Steelers are one of the last teams in the NFL that really subscribe to the like do it all running back. He is big. He weighs like 230 pounds, which is big for a running back. He's a big old boy. He's so big and good at running that when Josh Jacobs, 4th pick overall or whatever, or no, he was later, but I don't know. I might be thinking Leonard Fournette.
So maybe.
Yeah, who knows? It was probably He actually had a better yards per carry as a sophomore than Josh Jacobs did the year that he got drafted out of Alabama. He's a bruising runner. He breaks tackles like all the time. Like it's very tempting for analysts to say like, oh, Najee Harris, he's just running through these wide open holes all the time from Alabama's awesome offensive line. To an extent, that is true. He did have some, but he's very decisive behind the line of scrimmage. He sets up his blocks well, and he runs through weak tackles. And if he gets to the second level, one person doesn't tackle him. And that's not really going to change at the NFL. NFL athletes are better, and they're faster, and they're better tacklers, but they're not bigger, and they're not stronger. And he's big and strong, and he's just good. He averages 6 yards a carry playing in the SEC. He's going to get you yardage, and he's an incredibly gifted pass catcher. You're going to be tempted to say, what about Travis Etienne? Because he's so fast and you just think big play guys are better. No, Najee Harris is a way better wide receiver catching the football than Travis Etienne. So if you're looking for a guy that does it all, does the kind of stuff the Steelers need, and fills a position of need, and is the best player at his position, it's Najee Harris. That's why the Steelers are going to take him. They're not going to overthink this. There's other players that are really good. I'm going to try and not go through all of them. I'm going to try and calm myself down, but he's definitely their first-round pick. So that's one.
Here is my analytics corner on the Najee Harris, Travis Etienne thing. So one thing that everyone assumes about Clemson, because they've been hanging with Alabama recently, is like, oh, Clemson is one of these teams where like they're just flat out better than everybody everywhere. And that's not necessarily true of their offensive line. But one thing that Najee Harris doesn't do that Etienne does is take the risks and get tackled for big losses. Now, Etienne is like the home run hitter type of guy, and once he gets daylight, like nobody's fucking catching him. But he will also put you in like 2nd and 14 in a heartbeat, where Najee Harris is more disciplined and has, I think, probably a little better vision. And we talked about breaking the weak tackles. Like, Najee Harris and the Steelers will love this because Tomlin is a big old hardo for discipline and all the cliches, staying ahead of schedule, all that stuff, ahead of the sticks. Like, that's what Najee Harris is going to do. He's not going to take dumb twirling around losses and shit like that, and he's big, and so he's not going to get these easy like arm tackles from guys that are being blocked and shit like that.
And for the record, Steeler Nation, Steelers Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert were also at Clemson's Pro Day, and they also love Travis Etienne. So here's what I'm telling you right now. You better pray that Miami doesn't take Najee Harris, because if they do, the Steelers may well draft Travis Etienne.
It'll be 2nd and 14 in Pittsburgh.
I'm telling you, it's Willie Parker all over again, except here's the thing. We love Willie Parker. He was an undrafted free agent. He was free. This wasn't the first pick of the whole draft. Like, I will embrace Travis Etienne, and I will erase this podcast from the internet, however hard it is to do that if they draft him. But I'm telling you right now, you want, if you accept that the Steelers are almost certainly going to take a running back, which I think the odds are very strong that they are, you need to pray that Miami doesn't do it first and take Najee Harris, because they're the team that seems to be projected as a possibility. And if they do take Najee Harris, I would just say pucker that butthole right up, because it's going to be a very nervous 40 minutes or 2 hours or however long the NFL stretches out between picks 18 and 24. There are other players that the Steelers could pick. I think Tevin Jenkins is still like in that top list, even though they weren't at his pro day. Landon Dickerson, also an Alabama player, is right there. Alex Leatherwood, the tackle that we talked about earlier, is right up there. They're both really nice offensive linemen that could help make the Steelers bigger and meaner up front real quick. I think those are kind of guys that you'd be looking at as a first round. And if you're thinking, Chad, why don't the Steelers just trade down so they can get these positions of less value for less value? Well, I'll tell you why. Because they never do it. So we can entertain all that smart shit, but it's just not going to happen because the Steelers don't really do it. Kevin Colbert, he's a traditional guy. He likes to have his player at his number. Every once in a while, he'll trade up, but he just did that for Devin Bush, so he's probably still coming down from that. That was only 2 years ago. I just don't think it's going to happen. The one other thing I should warn you guys about, no one's talked about this for a while, but it is pretty likely that Ben Roethlisberger is going to retire. There are 2 quarterbacks that crazy things could happen. It's all about the pro day, remember. Mac Jones and Justin Field. Mike Tomlin loves his Big Ten. Oh boy, does he love his Big Ten. And we know about Alabama. So these are the 2 quarterbacks that are, I don't want to say realistic, but it happens. Aaron Rodgers was drafted 27th or whatever. Like, sometimes weird things happen and teams fall out of love with players. If one of these 2 players starts to slide into the teens, I would get your emotions wherever they need to be. Like, if you don't like those players, you should be nervous. If you do like those players, get a little excited, because it's a real life. The Steelers are going to need a quarterback soon, and these are 2 quarterbacks that the Steelers most definitely paid a bunch of attention to. I would not worry about Trey Lance, which is a shame because I love Trey Lance. I love him. So who's your second player? I'm not going to go through all the players. I'll run through a couple more when I name my second one. But do you have another player that you think the Steelers could draft in the 2nd or the 3rd round?
in the So I'll go Stokes in the second round, and I'm gonna go away. If I had to go away from Najee Harris, I would go Ojolari, just because, like, replace Bud Dupree, Steeler defense, that's how we do things. And they'll just rock with Beecham and fucking whoever else.
Who was your second Bengals pick again? Alex Leatherwood. I'm writing this down for posterity.
Okay.
Alex Leatherwood was your Bengals and Jamar Chase, and I was Jamar Chase and Milton. I'll write that down later. Okay,
I
Steelers.
even have a contingency second pick for the Bengals if they go with Penei Sewell, but we'll get there.
You don't get to do that. Dude, we're projecting the future, Joey. There are no contingencies in the future. This isn't a.
Hey, when I woke up this morning, I woke up in the freest fucking country in the world, America, and I can do whatever I want.
Actually, it's the freest country in the world, according to you, and yet you still can't do this because I made rules. So it's a shame. How does that feel? So who's your one and only pick for the Steelers first round? Is it Najee, or are you going different?
Yeah, I'll go Najee. Since we're doing this for accuracy and not for fun, I'll go Najee and then Eric Stokes.
Eric Stokes. I like that because the Steelers ignore boards, and he is pretty far down the boards. Just so you know, though, as a warning, the Steelers attended Florida State's Pro Day, probably almost exclusively for one man, and his name is Asante Samuel Jr. So I would say if you're looking for a defensive, dark horse first-round pick, because the Steelers like to reach, especially on their corners, Asante Samuel Jr. is a really, really interesting fit, and he's kind of cool. I'm going to get you guys excited about him because they might do it, because this is the kind of bullshit the Steelers do in the first round. They come out of nowhere with these like guys that are ranked like 100. He's small, but he's got an incredible feel for routes, and he, even in man coverage, he's pretty physical for his size, and he's really good at keeping his eye on the quarterback while mirroring routes. So he makes a lot of plays on the football that way. He's really compared to his dad a lot. Asante Samuel Sr., who played for the Patriots, was really, really good. He makes a lot of nice interceptions. He anticipates route combinations really well. One of his best interceptions of the year, his wide receiver leaves and doesn't do anything, or he stays in the block. So Asante Samuel's just hanging out. So he kind of reads the quarterback, drops back, and basically intercepts a crossing route. The quarterback never sees him, and he returns it a bunch of yards. So he could play effectively in a zone kind of situation, which the Steelers like to mix in. And I think with his movement and athletic ability, he could potentially fill the slot position that is left vacant by the loss of Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton moving to the outside. So another guy that could fit that kind of need. My second pick, this is really tough. I'm going to give you two guys, and then I'm going to pick one of them. The one that no one's going to want to hear is tight end Pat Friarmuth. He played at Penn State. He's arguably the second best tight end in the class, but the kind of whole point is that it's Kyle Pitts and then a bunch of nobodies. But the Steelers love this guy. They love him so much. They were at Penn State's Pro Day, so just so you know, Jason Oweh of Zero Sack fame, another very dark horse Steeler first round pick. But Pat Friarmuth is arguably the best blocker in the class. He's very physical. His nickname is Baby Gronk. He does not deserve that nickname, but it is his nickname. But he's pretty good. I mean, he's a good football player. He's going to come into the NFL and probably be able to be an effective in line, meaning tucked right up against the line of scrimmage blocker, a lot faster than most of these other rookie tight ends would be able to adjust to that. And he's pretty physical after the catch. He's not going to blow your skirt up with his route running or speed or anything like that, but he's effective. I would say without any of the accolades or career success, not altogether different than Heath Miller. Heath Miller might be the absolute ceiling of this guy, and I would think less, but it's the same style of player. And I mean, I can't really express how much they love him. They literally, the Steelers tight ends coach, and he embraced after the workout. Like, they are in love familially. Like, they they have love for each other, all of them. So he's like a really likely candidate, and he would probably have to go in the second round for the Steelers. But I'm going to go with my draft crush. I made a huge mistake last year and didn't bring up my draft crush, which was Chase Claypool, and they drafted him, and I've regretted it ever since because I told you over text message I loved him. I didn't bring him up in the podcast because I didn't think that they would take him. I'm going with Quinn Miners. Quinn Miners. You want to talk about Quinn Miners? Do you remember who Quinn Miners is?
It's your crush.
Dude. So he made his name at the Senior Bowl this year. Why did he make his name at an all-star game in which players practice for 1 week and then play a meaningless game? I'll tell you why. Because he played Division III, and he was an offensive tackle for Wisconsin Whitewater, which I don't know what animal their mascot is. Nobody knows. They're Division III. You can't even watch most of their games. But he came in, white guy with dreadlocks. You got to YouTube his highlights, by the way. I wish I remembered who made the video I sent you.
But I didn't know that was the guy.
Yeah, this is the guy. So you got to YouTube his highlights because most of them are him working out in the woods. And he's lifting logs. He's lifting 2x4s. He's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. He's big old boy, white guy, dreadlocks. Skin tone matters because dreadlocks, unconventional on white guy. Nothing wrong with it. Just painting a picture here. And then picture that at the Senior Bowl wearing his jersey like a belly shirt. He has his big old offensive lineman belly hanging out. Comes in, D3 prospect, who, by the way, didn't play any football in 2020 because D3 schools aren't playing football in a pandemic, Joey. They're not playing D3 football in a pandemic. No. He comes into the Senior Bowl, and he starts tossing fools around. He's tossing these SEC, Big 12, Big 10 suckers around. He's not even playing his position. He played tackle. They started having him play center. He's snapping the ball and tossing fools around. It was bonkers. This guy's bonkers. And if you find his tape, which the end of this highlight video on YouTube shows, it's humiliating, the things he does to the D3 competition. Now, I understand that the NFL is not D3, but he gets to the second level and he throws human beings into the air. He throws the linebackers into the air. He's the opposite of Penei Sewell. He wants to punish you. He wants to punish you all game. And I think that's what the whole problem with the Steelers' offensive line was, because they were pretty good. But football is a physical game. I don't need to explain that to you, Joey. You love that part of it. And you need to be dealing out the punishment in football in order to win. You wear down your opponent mentally and physically that way. You need to deal out punishment. And the way the Steelers' offensive line plays, even though they're bigger, they take punishment. They absorb the hits over and over and over again. They're getting worn down by defenses. Quinn Miners is a punisher of people. Nobody wants to play against him. Tevin Jenkins is actually very similar. So if you want offensive linemen, these are two guys you want on your team. So I want him. I want him badly on the Steelers, and especially because I think if he doesn't end up on the Steelers, he might end up on one of our other AFC North teams because we have a few teams that need a center, and I think he's awesome. Quinn Miners. Look him up on YouTube. He's amazing. I'm writing it down.
That YouTube channel is World of Sports Network. So if you look up World of Sports Network and Quinn Miners, you'll need to Google how to spell his last name because it's not like a coal miner. It's some crazy shit.
Yeah, it's MEIN as in net, ERZ.
Yeah, it's wild.
But honestly, all of their videos for offensive linemen are really funny. So if you want to scout some offensive line and laugh along the way, whatever Joey just said, go to their videos. They're great. Quinn Miners. I think they'll have to take him in the second round, though. But if they get him in the third round, get ready for me to be blowing party hats all over this podcast when we do the Steelers draft recap.
That's what we call it now, blowing party
Super,
hats.
super party pun time.
We'll have to put an X rating. Zuckerberg's going to kick us off Facebook from what Chad
This is a family podcast, Joey. It's going to be legitimate party streamers. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know what you're talking about at all.
You better deliver on that.
I don't even know if there's a party store in the town I live in Vermont.
I don't even know if there's a party store in the state. Heavens.
Dude, I'm so excited about Quinn Miners. If they get Pat Friarmuth and not Quinn Miners, there's not going to be party streamers, but I'll get excited.
We'll send someone to your house to check on you.
One more sleeper. Notre Dame, another school that the Steelers always visit, including this year. Tight end Tommy Tremble. He is a vicious blocker, a little bit on the smaller side, but he's a tight end that could go later in the draft, third round, maybe fourth. Who knows? He's capable of catching the ball. He's got a little bit of similarity to George Kittle in that he's deceptively good as a receiver, but wasn't used that much of it in the college. Now, George Kittle, much better than Tommy Tremble, but similar attitude, similar in the deceptive, well-rounded ability, but really good blocker. So if you, again, want the Steelers to be very physical and you recognize that they need another tight end because Eric Ebron's the only one there and he doesn't count because he doesn't block anybody, Tommy Tremble is a guy that you can get pretty excited about, and they don't have to give up crazy draft capital to do it. Okay, I'm done.
All right. Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. Picking at number 26 in the first round. Their needs, linebacker, inside linebacker is a need.
Joey,
yes, sir.
I screwed up again.
Oh, no. Okay.
The study, best player available.
Yeah.
The Steelers, since 1966, 12 times have drafted the best player available. And bear in mind that this study is not biased towards Steelers. Terry Bradshaw was not a best player available. Mean Joe Green wasn't even the best player available, according to this metric. So 12 times. The Steelers are pretty good. They are the leader. You won't hear a number higher than 12 going forward. But to me, the most important thing here is that 4 times since 2000, modern history, an undrafted free agent taken by the Steelers has been the player that ended it. So they were responsible for having a better career than all the players before them in the draft since the last one. So they're kind of, what that basically says is that they're really good at filtering through the undrafted talent. They're 4 times since 2000, they ended the list by taking the best undrafted free agent. So when we talk about these no names, you got to respect that there's some excitement there. And we're going to talk about James Pierre a lot, who's their undrafted free agent from last year that you might be watching a lot play against guys like Higgins and Hollywood Brown and Hollywood Higgins guys, and you better hope he's as good as I tell you he is, because he's not in jail like Justin Lane. All right, sorry. Back to the Browns.
All right, back to the Browns. There is a lot of agreement that the Browns will take an inside linebacker. It is a need. It's one of, to be honest, very few needs. They don't have many glaring needs on like that first spot in the depth chart going through their positions. Edge, wide receiver, that's like a rotation thing where they could use some depth. But I think linebacker is like their most obvious need. Mel Kiper and Todd McShay both agree that Zaven Collins, the linebacker from Tulsa, is the move that the Browns will go for there. But also Jamin, I think is his name, Jamin Davis.
Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce his name. It kind of looks like Jamin, Jamin, Jamin.
It could be Jamin. Linebacker from Kentucky is also in there. And these guys are do-it-all guys. They are stop the run, drop in coverage, athletic, in the mold of like a Devin White type of guy.
Or speaking in the division,
down in
Devin
Tampa,
Bush.
Devin Bush. Yep. So very similar to that, all around guy. Going further back, even as far as in the division, like C.J. Mosley. That's who I think of when I think of like Devin Bush, that style of player.
Except with Zaven Collins, you want to add 40 pounds to all of these people because he is a big old
he's
house.
A monster. Which is why he's probably the bigger pick. You know, a lot of people are leaning more towards him. For some reason, he's not there. Then I'd look at Jamin Davis, however you say it. And then one dark horse that is similar to the Jamar Chase thing, but different. Rashad Bateman. So this is the first wide receiver from this draft that we are talking about.
Dang it,
and Chad's
Joey.
mad because I took this little tidbit from Chad. It looks like he trains with OBJ.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so there's a little bit of connection there. Did you have something else on Rashad Bateman, Cleveland?
No one has talked about him that I've listened to the Browns, and I just think he's like a really sneaky possibility. He's probably going to be drafted in that range. My big thing that I was going to say, and I have it written down hopefully here, is that the Browns realistically might only have one of their receivers under contract next year. OBJ is signed through 2024, but it's crazy money. Landry is through 23, but again, pretty huge money. So both of those guys are kind of releasable if injuries or whatever. And then Higgins and Kadarius Hodge are only signed basically through next year. So, like, they have a good wide receiver core, but it's built on a very flimsy ground. So it's very realistic that this team could target wide receiver early in the draft. And I think Rashad Bateman is a perfect fit for them. I want you to just think about how I just want you in your little Ravens mind to think about a little bit of this, because I scouted this thinking about the Ravens because they are a team that a lot of people have discussed wide receiver for. And Rashad Bateman is one of the players in that range. So I'm calling him a false giant. Everybody said that he was like 6'3" and 200 million pounds and whatever, but it turns out he's like 6 foot 180. Yeah. And that doesn't mean anything to us because he's still a great athlete, but it means that he's not physically imposing by NFL standards. Although he plays pretty big, he's literally like 20 pounds less than what he said he was, and 2 inches. So he's lying to seem bigger than he is. And he showed some contested catch ability, and double move of aptitude. But like what he really did well was breaks. Like he came out of breaks really well. I don't want to say he's like an incredible route runner because there's more to it than that, but like he can get out of a break really fast, and that's when he gets open. And guess what? When you're running a play action pass and you're supposed to go 10 yards down the field and take a quick left, and Baker Mayfield is supposed to back up 4 steps, fake a handoff, and throw it to a spot, that's what you want. You want a guy that can leverage a corner and get 2 yards of space for the exact amount of time. Baker's timing and the offense, it's like a perfect marriage. It is a perfect marriage for the Browns, and just hold on tight. I guess I'll just say now, I just think he is the worst fit for the Ravens. And that's why I want the Ravens to draft him, because I think he will just fail. I just think he will fail so hard there, because that's not what Lamar. He might be able to do it, but it's not what they're designed to do on offense. But yeah, good call with the Browns. I think he'd be a really good fit with the style of routes he runs and the way he gets open and the timing.
Well, thank you, sir. Also of note in some of my digging, PFF. So I talked about kind of the lack of glaring holes in this roster. Um, PFF ranked the Browns roster as the second highest rated pre-draft roster, which pretty
I mean, it makes
pretty
sense.
impressive.
We didn't see much in the way of holes in it.
Yeah.
So you think inside linebacker? Did you look into? I didn't really agree with that. I actually don't think they'll draft a linebacker.
You think they're going edge?
I think edge or even corner, just because of the questions with Greedy Williams' health, and they lost. What was his name? What did Justin always call him? Money. Who's the guy that played all the
Terrence
time?
Mitchell.
Yeah, Money Mitchell, and he's gone. So it could be depth, but also just important for playing time because they've had a lot of questions about that. So I was kind of looking in corner direction. I basically just wanted to make fun of them because all the edge and corners that are like coming into these 20s, they just have crazy levels of questions. So like you see Greg Newsome a lot, but he like gets injured every year and he only has one career interception. So it's like, is he a first round pick? He played at Northwestern. Isn't that just a bunch of nerds? I mean, you call
Yeah.
yourself an athlete, but you seem like a
Journalists.
nerd to me. Exactly. Or there's like Caleb Farley, who will probably get picked before the Browns, but if he slips because he had back surgery, are you going to take a player that had back surgery? Are you going to look at your secondary and say, it's been tough dealing with all these injuries. Maybe I'll take this guy that just had back surgery. You know what I mean? Like, or are they going to take Asante Samuel Jr., an undersized guy with some potential? Now, obviously, if the Steelers take him, he's awesome. But if the Browns take him, he's tiny. He
Too
stinks.
small. Yeah.
Yeah, too small by a long shot. Um, and the edge guys are similar. So I just like, I really think I, if it were the old Browns, I'd just be so excited about this because I know they'd take the wrong guy. But I kind of think Andrew Berry is super slick. I think he's super slick. He's a slippery little eel. He's a slippery little nasty eel, that Andrew Berry. I don't like him. I don't like him anymore. And I think the one linebacker that they could take because he's a slippery eel is the guy we're going to call JOK after I pronounce his name one time. One time. Jeremiah Awusu Coramoa. He's from Notre Dame. He's super duper fast. He's a bit undersized. So a lot of teams are like, oh, is he a linebacker? I don't know. He keeps getting compared to Isaiah Simmons, the guy the Cardinals drafted last year, except he weighs like 30 less pounds. So he's just not the same at all. But I listened to a little bit of an interview of the Browns defensive coordinator, and he loves running dime defenses, which feature 6 defensive backs. And they did it 16 times last year, which is very, very little because you have like a lot of defensive snaps over the course of a season. He'd rather do it like 400 times. That's the perspective you need to be thinking about. So the Browns need safety depth, but what if they had a kind of hybrid safety linebacker, which is basically what this kid did at Notre Dame? He could guard tight ends and running backs really well. It's all over his tape. He hits hard. He's got linebacker sensibilities with safety abilities. Ryman, awesome. JOK could be the sneaky Andrew Berry son of a bitch pick. I'm still deciding what my Browns picks are going to be, but that's the one that I think that could be the sneaky one.
Yeah, there's a Christian Barmore talk here and there.
Defensive tackle.
Yep, from Alabama. In that safety vein of JOK, the guy from TCU.
Morig.
Yep.
Morig.
He's a player for the Ravens, possibly, as like kind of like a fringe guy. Even maybe Pittsburgh. He could play a little bit of slot corner, possibly. some people in Pittsburgh aren't real big on Mr. Edmonds. So
Yeah. Morig's good. I have notes on him as a possible Ravens player, and basically I was like, if the Ravens draft him, I'm going to be pissed because it means he's really good. I mean, he plays center field, kind of Ed Reed style. He's rangy, is the term that you'll hear a lot of these guys say. But he's a nasty little bug. He gets in that line of scrimmage and he dives in there like kind of Palomalu style. He's not a form tackler, but he'll throw his body in your way aggressively and to good effect. And I think, yeah, in the JOK lane, he would be a more traditional Browns pick. And I like that idea too. He might be the one I end up picking as my Browns first round pick.
yeah, the deterrent to that for me is all of these moves they made in the secondary, mostly Jones or Johnson, whatever that guy's name is.
Joe Johnson.
John Johnson. Yeah. You
We
know,
need to,
and
like,
Troy Hill, like, so I feel like they probably feel like the secondary is bolstered.
They want that third safety though, man, to run that dime. They want to
Yeah.
they want to run out of that defense, I think. So I really think that you could be on something there.
Well, thanks, buddy.
So who are you gonna pick? Who's your Browns
I
first round
am
player?
gonna pick Zaven Collins. I'm gonna side with the people that know more than me, and McShay and Kuiper both right now are on him. He's got the NFL size with like the freak ability, and for some reason BJ Goodson's not Brown anymore, so we'll fill that.
Well,
fill
I
that
specifically announced on social media that people were to come here to not get Mel Kiper's lame advice, which is why I'm going to pick the right pick, which is not what you're doing. I'm going to take JOK. I think he's the perfect. I don't think the Browns will take a linebacker because they don't see it as a position of value. And Andrew Berry's really into analytic-y nerd stuff right there. But he also watches the games and knows that the only guy that was making tackles in the middle of the field they released for the second year in a row in, what was it? Was it BJ Goodson? BJ Goodson.
Yep.
So Schobert's gone, Goodson's gone. They need a guy in the middle that they can really work behind, but also run that smaller defense. So I think JOK is the bright, beautiful future of the middle of the field for the Cleveland Browns. And now's where it gets funny because I don't think that I've planned at all for anything beyond the first round for the Browns. So do you have another guy that you like for the Browns?
Well, because of some of the questions on Christian Barmore, I think he's got some injury stuff. Is that right?
I thought he was supposed to go in like before the Browns even picked, so I don't know where you're headed here, but
okay.
You might be more up to date than me. I thought he was like going to be the first defensive tackle taken, probably.
Oh, fuck me.
I mean, you can take him. I don't know anything.
Nope. I read some stuff about him maybe slipping, so I don't know. Nope. I don't have another pick. 59 is a long way to go. A lot of things can happen. I'm gonna go with that. Everything after 31 doesn't matter.
So you're not even going to take a player?
Nope, I'll just take one. You know what? I'll take a player. I'll take Eric Stokes again.
I like that strategy, actually. I like that strategy. You going to go Eric Stokes again? I think he's like a second round.
I'm going to say that.
I'll tell you what, you should take him, and I'll take a guy. I was going to say, I have a first round kind of guy that could totally slip. We could each go first round guys that we think will slip for the Browns.
I was about to go a first round guy that could slip. So,
okay, do it.
Jason Owe.
I like where you're headed there. Jason Owe of Penn State fame for running the fastest 40 ever and never sacking a quarterback.
Any sacks.
0 sacks for an
Captain
edge player
disruption.
in 2020. Yeah, no kidding. He spends his whole time in the backfield not doing anything. I was going to ask you about him. We can talk about him a little might take an edge player, and this just educates people about. Do you think of getting
Oh,
back?
educate.
Oh, I'm so good at this on accident. Do you think that getting a sack is kind of like scoring a goal in soccer or yeah, soccer, where it's like you kind of just have to have a nose for it. Like there's people with all the technical ability, but there's just like a finishing element. Like you just have to finish a play. And those are the two sports that I can compare. I'm sure there's other sports where there's a kind of comparability, but it just feels to me like I'm nervous about Owe because it doesn't matter if you can get close. Like some people just they get to that point and they refuse to not get it done. And I think sacking the quarterback is one of those instances where like you can't just beat your guy. Like you have to finish. And I'm getting 0 sacks is pretty bad. That's pretty bad. That's
Yeah,
pretty bad.
Powerhouse Big Ten conference this year.
Well, I like that you took him because I wanted to make fun of all the edge players that the Browns could possibly take in the first round because I want them to take an edge player and look, I don't want anybody to fail, but I do have to root for the Browns to fail. So in doing that, I have to root for individuals to fail. It's not me, it's the system, okay? I'm a good person. I want people to succeed, and I want Jalen Phillips to succeed too. I just want him to succeed in the world of business or finance. Finance. So I'm gonna take Jalen Phillips, who a lot of people think is talented enough to be like the first edge rusher taken off the board. But here's the thing about Jalen Phillips. He started his career at UCLA, and then he banged his head like 100 times in a row. And UCLA's medical team refused to reactivate him to play football and said that he should medically retire, which he did. Now I'm a Penguins fan. I've watched this happen to Sidney Crosby. It's a sad story. Like we're not rooting for head injuries. I don't want to make light of this, but we're a make light podcast. So I'm going to try and dance this. So he leaves UCLA and he goes to Miami, where he falls back in love with the game of football. Miami has what you could either call really innovative, progressive thinking doctors or people that don't give a shit. And they're just like, yeah, go bang your head some more. You'll be fine. And he did. He banged his head on quarterbacks all the time last year. He just banged his head all over the court. He just kept doing it. And it didn't hurt. And he was fine. And he loves football now. And he might love all the money because it turns out he actually really loves producing music. And I'm thinking like Cleveland, the old Cleveland, and possibly the current Cincinnati are the type of teams that would just be like, this talent is too much. Who cares that he doesn't know how many fingers that we held up when we did our Zoom meeting? Like, and he might, I mean, he's the type of guy that who knows, like, what if he gets to a team and an NFL doctor looks at him and they're like, he just can't play. And somehow they miss it. You know what I mean? I'd be extremely nervous about any team drafting this player. Any team. Like if the Steelers draft him, and it is possible. The Steelers love drafting edge players. They will love some of these people that I'm talking down on. No sack Owe. They'll love that. Especially
Penn State.
They love it, right?
Yep.
They were at the pro day. Jarvis Jones, total failure. Had 1 million sacks in college. Bud Dupree had a spinal injury, was not a refined pass rusher, and was extremely athletic, and he was great. So yeah, they'll probably love Owe because he ran so fast and is so strong. So when I make fun of the Browns, I'm just doing it because if the Steelers take these players, they're going to be Hall of Famers, and if the Browns do it, they won't. That's the only reason I'm doing it. That's all. Okay. So I'm going to take Jalen Phillips as a guy that basically every team refuses to draft, and the Browns just can't take it. They just can't help themselves. Plus, it gives me kind of 2 shots at their first round.
And that would. So you think he's gonna fall to the second?
I really don't.
That's the spot that we're picking him in, though.
technically, but I'm also just taking 2 shots at a player.
Fair
I
enough.
think it's very unlikely that he falls to their spot in the second, but I'll admit it. You're in charge of the Browns, and I didn't do in-depth research on the Browns. I mostly just wanted to make fun of the players they might take.
Well, let's keep making fun of players because
Wait.
oh yeah, let's talk about best player available.
Best player available. So since 1966, the Browns have successfully drafted the best player available 4 times. That's going to be your low number, folks. 4 times, and none since the year 2000.
Couldn't be me. Couldn't be my beloved Ravens.
We'll see. We'll see if Baker Mayfield is that guy.
You
No,
know what?
he's included in 2018, so he is
You know
not
what
a
I'm
best
going to
player
do
available.
no matter what the Ravens number is, right?
I don't.
Only been a team since 1996, baby. We're working with half the history.
Yeah.
I'm
We'll see
already
if they get
prepared.
to half.
After you said 12 was the most, I was like, all right, bet.
So yeah, so the Browns are the worst. The Steelers were the highest. We'll see where the Ravens fall in between. But first, Joey, tell us all about your team
But
and how they're
first,
so sweet and great.
oh, this team fucking rocks so hard.
Oh, you got to do the news.
The
We didn't
Orlando
talk
Brown
about it.
trade.
Yeah, that's probably how we should lead.
So last week, was that after the podcast? Heavens.
Yeah, man.
Wow. Yeah, so that's huge news. Orlando Brown Jr. Was traded to the Kansas City Chiefs along with a second round pick this year for the Chiefs' first round pick, number 31, this year, their third round pick this year, number 104, and next year, late round pick, a fifth.
They like exchange a 5 for a 6 or something like that. I don't know.
Something
cares?
similar. And a relatively irrelevant pick, unless they draft Tom Brady next year. Who knows? Could happen. So this puts the Ravens in a really interesting position. They're the only team in the division that has 2 first-round picks. They've drafted 2 first-round picks, I think, 4 times in their history. The first time, obviously, being the inaugural year, Ray Lewis and Jonathan Ogden. That's like a dream draft. Ozzie Newsome's feather in his cap before the cap was even made. But these are late round picks, and so they need a number 1 wide receiver, no matter how you feel about Marquise Brown. And he came on strong in the playoffs last year, and he showed a lot. But in this offense, and with his drops, I think he's more of like a gadget guy than a number 1, a true number 1. He's a speed demon, he's a straight line guy, an end around guy. They started doing some fun stuff with him. And so a wide receiver would be lovely. Terence Marshall Jr.
Is it Terrence or Terrace?
Terrence, I believe.
Okay.
I don't know. Is there a misspelling?
Keep talking about him. I'm gonna double check.
Was at LSU. He was their leading.
Terrace.
Terrace. Well, there you go. Mr. Marshall Jr. for LSU was the leader on a team with no true number 1 quarterback last year after Jamar opted out and Joe Burrow left. And he showed out with not as much around him as the previous year. He's a very good wide receiver. He's one of these guys, like him and Bateman are pretty much considered like the next guys after the big 3, which would be Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, and Devontae Smith. He has good size. He is a good route runner. He can make contested catches. He's lovely. We already talked about Rashad Bateman not being as big as he reported. Both these guys produced in college. And then the third receiver that people around the Ravens are talking about is Kadarius Tony. He was like the do-everything guy outside of Pitts for Florida this year. And he had like almost 1,000 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns and like 600 rush yards and a couple touchdowns this year. So like they used him in really creative, fun spots. But he's kind of like just Hollywood Brown to me. There's nothing super that pops out about like his wide receiver skill as far as like route running and some of the minutia of being a wide receiver. He's more of like a speed freak, and we already have a speed freak, and he drops lots of balls sometimes, and then sometimes he's pretty good and really exciting, and so I don't want another one of those. Terence Marshall would
Get
be
it right. He's going to
would
be on
be
your
super sick. And I think that the Ravens will go with a wide receiver with the first of the two picks. That'd be 27th overall. And then 31st overall, edge or one of these plethora of tackles. Some edge guys. We talked about Jalen Phillips. We talked about Jason Oweh. We didn't talk much about Azeez Ojulari. He's from Georgia. He produces, unlike Jason Oweh. He's a longer guy, kind of leaner, kind of smaller. Widely considered to be ready to start, but he's also probably going to be gone by the time he gets to the Ravens.
Yeah, I think that's the rub. Otherwise, he's a great fit. One of the big compliments of him is something the Ravens look for in their edges is how he sets the edge in the run game. He's incredibly physical and strong that way, and a Ravens style player. I think you're right. If he's available, I wouldn't be surprised if they're at the podium before they're even invited to do it. But
yeah.
But I'd be surprised. But this is kind of how the Ravens do it, right? They get the guy that just kind of somehow makes it to them a lot of times.
Yeah, and this year that somehow makes it to him may involve a trade up. You know, they could very well package one of these firsts with. They could package the two picks that they got from Kansas City, a first and a third, to move up in the first round and back in the third, or get a first and a fourth or fifth, something like that. Move up a little bit, just depending on how some things play out. So guys, they could, if they really wanted to go like all in on a receiver, they could even conceivably move up with these first round picks for Waddle or Smith or Jamar.
Do you think that that's likely, or it's obviously not likely?
I don't think it. I think there is a chance. I think it's a non-zero chance that happens. Just depend, but they'd have to fall some. Like one of them would have to fall out of like 10.
Yeah, I feel like the highest that the Ravens trade up would be 14 or 15. I'd be surprised if they go much higher than that. And I think it's possible that a guy like Waddle does fall that far. Because you never know. It just happens. But they just don't seem like a team. They like their picks. They like making picks. Eric DeCosta actually said that he believes that the draft is mostly luck. That's why he accumulates picks. So It feels unlike him. When they drafted Lamar, they moved into the first round to do it, which makes a lot of sense with a quarterback. Like, there's a reason you trade up strategically for that pick
You
beyond
trade up
just that you
for
like the
a
player.
specific person.
Yeah, so I just feel like in the first round, they'll be perfectly happy to take players in the first round. I'd be really surprised if they went away from. If anything, I would think they'd trade down. But it's an interesting question, and
Yeah.
they are movers. Unlike the Steelers, they're pretty active.
Yeah.
They're happy to be moving and shaking. So you thinking
So
receiver with the first round pick? Who you settled on?
with the first one, I like Terrace Marshall Jr. I don't want Tony, and I don't believe the Bateman hype. Like, Bateman kind of like got springboarded into the conversation after his pro day 40, which was a 4.39.
He's a terrible fit for the Ravens. I really
I
want them to draft him.
Yeah, I don't want him. I don't want him.
Do you think if I just pick him, I can will it into existence?
You could try. And so, like, I think it's also possible with that first pick if they really like Quiddy Pay from Michigan, an edge guy who, like, could go in the middle of the first round, but could also go day 2, just depending on how things shake out. And he's more of like a raw motor guy.
Dude,
That
to me, he's like Aziz Ojolari again. Like, I mean, if he gets to them, he's
Yeah,
even more a Raven than Aziz. He's bigger, but he
yeah,
has he's just, yeah, he's a Raven.
yeah. I
So
think I think a good comp for him is even like Pernell McPhee. Like,
yeah.
I think that's a fair comparison. And then let's see. So as for edge guys, let's see if we've talked about everybody that I want to talk about.
The only other ones I was gonna mention are Joe Tryon. Do you care about him?
I don't have anything on him.
He's a 1-year starter. He played 1 year in Washington and then opted out in 2020. Gregory Russo was Florida State's star
Yeah.
pass rusher. Very basically, I wrote the same thing as Joe Tryon. So started 1 year, had 1 million sacks, and then took the year off. Carlos Basham Jr. is probably like the lowest rated, the most likely to be available later on. He played in Wake Forest. I don't actually have any way to make fun of him, so he might just. I think he's got really long arms. I feel like I remember hearing he's just like a leverage guy. He can, get that edge. I'll learn more about him if someone takes him.
And then O-line, tackles and centers. So Landon Dickerson, who we've already talked about, his ankles and ACLs and all of that fun. Misplaced Creed Humphrey is possible. Amongst the tackles that we've talked about, also, like, if they want to reach for, well, I'll save him for like a second rounder type thing. But like 31st pick, Liam Ike from Notre Dame.
Eichenberg.
I think it's yeah.
It's Eichenberg.
I abbreviated it. His issues. So he played left tackle in college, but he's got like some foot speed knocks, and those are things that are considered like, well, you just put him at right tackle and don't really worry about it much. He is also, because of those weaknesses, he is a better run blocker than a pass blocker. And so who better than the team that runs more than anybody in the league to go to and be a right tackle for?
I've been really struggling with the Ravens' offensive line situation because I listened to a lot of the film study, which is this Ken McCusick guy. He's an incredible grader and watcher of offensive lines, but sometimes I think he editorializes a little more, especially when it comes to draft, than projects what the Ravens will do. I've been thinking about these tackles, and Ken, he's very obsessed with arm length, and he does a great job. I don't want to sound like I'm making fun of him. I learn a lot from. You should all listen to Film Study podcasts if you care about the Ravens or offensive line football generally. However, half of the Ravens offense is the tackle literally ignoring the guy he's supposed to block. So who cares how long your arms are when you let a guy run by you and just crash down into somebody else? Like, who cares? You don't have to do it, except in pass blocking situations. But the defenders are so confused. They don't know what's going on. So you can have 12-inch arms and you can get into their body because they're like, what's going on? I don't even know. Where's Lamar? Where's Dobbins? Is Ingram still on the team? He just ran by me. Like, it's a mess. It's just a mess. And then, and we don't even know what the Ravens need. Like, we think they need a center, but what if they decide that Bozeman plays center, and then they can draft one of these tackles that might actually be better at guard, and then they can play him kind of wherever. Like, the Ravens are weird like this. They move offensive linemen around. They do all this funny business. It's like the Cup game. So, I'm trying to find all the money that I just gave to this guy on the street. I'm convinced I've got it figured out. And I am. I'm convinced. I'm convinced that the Ravens are they're a Landon Dickerson team. Like, if they think that his medical stuff checks out, they will take him with the 31st pick. They just will, because he's a physical freako. He got his ACL exploded, and 1 month later, he took the last couple snaps in the national championship game. You're supposed to be in bed. People that tear their ACLs, their leg is forced to be straight. Do you know what a center does? Have you seen them before they snap the ball? All their leg is bent all the way down. What was he doing? And then at Mac Jones Pro Day, they're interviewing Mac Jones afterwards. It's been all over the internet, and he's talking on the camera and whatever. And then this big old beefcake starts doing cartwheels in the background. It's Landon Dickerson.
On reconstructed ankles and knees.
Yeah. So, this dude's bonkers. He's really good, and it's important that we revisit him because I think he's going to be in the AFC North. If his medical isn't a disaster, he's going to be on the Steelers or most likely the Ravens or Bengals because that late first, early second round time. And I'm really tempted to change my boring Bengals pick of Milton, whatever. I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm doing it. I'm changing it. The Bengals are taking Landon Dickerson. I'm just changing it. I'm pulling him. I'm audibling. But the Ravens love him. And I think the other guy that they would love is Alex Leatherwood, who's got kind of all the stuff that Ken McCusick gets worked up about in terms of arm length and measurables and all that. But he's got the technique and strength to play guard. So if they do move Bozeman, they could do the funny business with Alex Leatherwood, have a player that contributes but also could develop into a tackle. But it really depends on what the Ravens do at tackle. I just don't even know what positions these idiots play because they're so confusing. So you're definitely taking Terrace Marshall. And do you have a second one? Because I'm trying to talk myself into some picks here. I'm going to take.
My second was going to be Landon Dickerson.
Oh, I like it because we need to spread our Landon Dickerson stuff around because these centers are going to be. And Creed Humphrey, I watched this. We've talked about Quinn Miners and Landon Dickerson now. Creed Humphrey's awesome, but he's awesome in the least fun way to watch ever. He's not a bully or a bruiser. He's a technician. When you watch his highlights, it's just him. He was a wrestler, a really gifted wrestler. So he's awesome with leverage and his feet. And he's just really good at positioning his body at the right angle, especially in running plays. He's not going to push his guy 5 yards down the field, but he is going to make sure that he's between his guy and the running back. He's just really good like that. He's just very good at moving his feet and creating the leverage in order to position himself that way. He's going to be really good, and he's kind of the low-risk guy. If all the Landon Dickerson stuff comes back medically bad, just put Creed Humphrey's name over his because he's really good player. I'm just hoping they all drop because we get excited about centers every year because we all need them, but they seem to drop in the draft. So I'm just kind of hoping, like, come on, Quinn Miners in the third. Quinn Miners in the third. Sorry, we're not talking about the Steelers anymore. So you're taking Landon Dickerson as your second. I'm going to do it. I'm going to will a little bit of Ravens failure into existence, and I'm going to take Rashad Bateman. I really think if I just write it down enough times, the Ravens will do it. And I just want to emphasize, I think Terrace Marshall is a great fit for the Ravens. And when I say great fit, I mean a great fit for a guy that drops passes. He had 5 drops in half a season. And by half a season, I think this is important, he quit before the Alabama game. He quit. What do you think's going to happen during Steelers week?
COVID, bro.
Dude,
Health.
if you can't take the heat, get out the kitchen. If
He's
you want to
got
play for
Joe Schmoes, half the team. Jamar Chase quit before the season started.
Dude, Jamar Chase is got a future and sponsorships to think about. Terrace Marshall is about to maybe not even make the NFL. No, seriously, he's really good. And compared to Rashad Bateman, he shows he's bigger, although not as good of a blocker as you would expect for his size. But he's really good with the contested catches. He's in his highlights, you see some broken play stuff, which I think is a relevant way to be on the field with Lamar because he likes to extend the plays and keep looking up the field. The thing that, where did I have written down on him? I guess the thing that, oh, that's it. He's just Miles Boykin, but smaller and less fast. That's the problem here. Like, they already have a guy that did all the things that he did in college, but that guy is faster. He's bigger. He's stronger. He's a better blocker. You're just stockpiling talent that you don't know how to use. Like, if you want to have a good wide receiver, why don't you put Devin Duvernay or James Prochet on the field and throw him the freaking ball? Like, the best thing the Ravens can do for the rest of the AFC North is draft either of these idiots because they don't know what they're doing. Like, they don't know what they're doing with these players.
To be clear, I don't want the Ravens to draft a wide receiver. They stink at it. And every time that they do it, it doesn't work out. I don't want them to. But look at me. They're going to, okay? It's going to happen. They're going to do it. So
I really hope so. I actually think that if they really have their druthers, and I think they do, they're sneaky. I think they might draft Richie Grant, and I won't go too deep into this guy, but he's a safety out of UCF, and this is exactly the kind of bullshit the Ravens pull. Everybody's talking about, what's his name, Morig.
Mm-hmm.
What's his first name? Trayvon Morig. Oh, he's the best center. Oh, TCU's got 2 safeties. Best safety, 2. They have 2 of the best safeties that are out there. All so good. They come in and they get this guy out of UCF that everybody knows is like the 2nd or 3rd best, but he's actually the best. Dude, this guy's turning over the ball every which way. He's creating forced fumbles. He chased down one of his highlights. His highlights are bonkers. His highlights are crazy. He's got like crazy route anticipation for interceptions. He's got man coverage where he's blanketing people so he can drop down in the slot. Safety. The Ravens defense is like what the Browns want to be. They'll throw all those defensive backs on the field. They don't care. They'll throw 7 of them on the field if they've got them healthy. He's got stuff where he's blitzing from the slot. He's doing run fits where he's sneaking into the box and he's getting into the lanes. You know Brandon Williams loves that, right? He's the one that's still on the team, right? The big one. They still have him. Yeah, they got rid of the other one. And then he got this great run play where he's like chases down this running back who's already run for like 25 yards. He's about to score a touchdown. He fucking forces a fumble. I'm sorry about the language. He forces a fumble.
That.
Yeah, dude. He's got no quit. He turns the ball over every which way. This Richie Grant guy, he's sneaky. And if he gets on the Ravens, I'm going to quit this podcast. I'm going to be so pissed. He's going to be either of these safeties. I'm just convinced that if the Ravens draft him, is going to be a Hall of Famer. Like I'm going to be so upset. So if I was going to make a pick with my brain about what the Ravens will do because they're good at drafting and they do this bullshit where they get these great players. I would take one of these two safeties, Morig or Richie Grant. I'd probably take Richie Grant. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take Rashad Bateman because the Ravens are going to draft Rashad Bateman, and it's the one way that they can fail. They will fail if they draft Rashad Bateman. That's what they'll do. So I'm going to take him. My second guy is going to be, because with that second first-round pick, I think I'm going to take Leatherwood. I'm going to take Alex. Did I already do that? No, you did. I think they'll take Leatherwood because I think he's got that offensive line kind of position flexibility, and I think that they can kind of use him either way. But I really like the Landon Dickerson pick that you made as your second. I think that is at least as likely, if not more likely.
What I would like to happen is whatever. So 27, take one of these centers, right? Dickerson, if the health checks out. If not, go with Humphrey. Great name, by the way, Humphrey. The Ravens have a good track record with Humphreys. You can't ignore this type of stuff.
I mean, that level of analysis is basically as good as we can actually do here.
31, trade back. And then draft an edge guy, one of these early round edge guys. And, like, if you have to take a wide receiver, for fuck's sake, if you have to take a wide receiver, like Diami Brown, UNC. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a big guy, big play. Both of his last 2 seasons in college, he averaged over 20 yards a catch. Like, that's fun. And, like, he can not be a first-round pick, and that would be super cool.
I also wouldn't mind seeing the Ravens, like, go full send on this weird running crazy offense they've got and just ditch Miles Boykin. You've already put him on the shelf. Yeah. Draft Rondelle Moore with the 31st pick. He's like 5'7", but he weighs like 190 pounds. He's a little bowling ball of speed and furious windstorm in which he just could be anywhere at any time. And you could just, like how Tyreek Hill runs circles around the quarterback doing that. You could have Marquise Brown and Rondelle Moore like bees running all around behind the line of scrimmage, going everywhere. And then you got James Prochet and Devin Duvernay. They're all back there. They're all doing stuff. And that's when I'd introduce, we've already got the shotgun offense in the NFL. We've already got the pistol offense in the NFL. And I proposed this to you last year when your snappers kept snapping the ball over people's heads. The rifle offense. You line Lamar up 12 to 15 yards behind the center, and he takes the long snaps like a punter, and then they just run their offense like that. And they just offensive line, like they let all those people just run by. And then he's got all his little bees, and he can throw to any of them, or he can beat everybody. And the offensive linemen start blocking linebackers and safeties.
Multiple screens, yeah. Get the linemen upfield.
Yeah, it's gonna be bonkers. The rifle offense. You heard it here first.
Yeah, call Greg Roman right now.
He knows my number.
Oh, heavens. Or just package everything and move up to 4 and take Kyle Pitts.
All right, so to close out, I promised that I would tell you a little bit about the Raven. You've been waiting for the Ravens numbers on the study. Yes. How many times? Do you want to make a guess as to how many times in the Ravens' history they've drafted the best player available? You know it's less than 12 and greater than 4.
Right. I'm going to say 7.
9. 9 times, including 4 separate times in 2018. In 2018, they did it 4 times.
Oh, man. Who are those guys?
I don't remember all of them, but one was obvious. And the other one I remember was the guy they just traded, Brown. Orlando Brown was the last one, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Lamar,
yeah.
Andrews,
Yep. Andrews.
Deshaun Elliott, maybe. Bozeman, 6th
Mm,
round pick.
yeah. Bozeman sounds right.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah,
Oh,
the
how
Ravens.
about these sick wide receivers the Ravens drafted? Jaleel Scott, Jordan Lasley. Fuck, dude.
We've all had our misses, dude. We've all had our misses. I'm blanking right now about the Texas guy that the Steelers drafted in the second round right before they started their epic.
Limas Swede?
Yeah, thank you. He
You're
stunk.
welcome.
He got so open. He's like the only receiver I've ever seen get to the NFL, get as open as he did in college, and still fail. Like he was just you get wide open and just drop it. Um, but yeah, so with that being said, quick rundown, and then we'll close out. We've been on here for a while. Joey has the Bengals taking Jamar Chase and Alex Leatherwood. These guys are going to be Bengals, according to Joey. I would say Jamar Chase and Landon Dickerson. Joey has the Steelers taking Najee Harris and Eric Stoker in the early rounds, day 1 and 2. So these are going to be 2 of the 3 Steelers picks in the first 2 days there. I'm going Najee Harris and Quinn Miners. Steeler Nation, get effing excited. Joey has the Browns taking Zaven Collins, which seriously, that's going to be scary. He's like a huge mammoth human being. He's going to mess everything up. And Jason Oweh. And actually, if you put both of those guys on the Browns defense, kind of a little bit rad. I'm not going to admit that ever again public, but that's actually, there's like some exciting stuff there, athletically speaking. I went with them taking JOK. Nope, not saying the full name again. And Jalen Phillips, who will never play a snap. And for the Ravens, Joey has Terrace Marshall Jr. Terrace, we're going out on the terrace to have some beers. And Landon Dickerson, who will never play a snap unless the Steelers take him. And then he'll be in the Hall of Fame, just like every other center of the Steelers draft. And I have the Ravens taking Rashad Bateman, who is going to be hilarious to watch that unfold, and Alex Leatherwood, who will probably be really good.
And there you have it, everybody. We are less than 72 hours from the draft starting. That's correct. Had to do that quick math in my head. Remember what day it was. I hope everybody enjoys. The draft is always fun. I like the first round on a Thursday night. It's a good time. It's exciting. There's going to be fans there again. It's in Cleveland this year.
Yeah, meant to bring that up.
Roger Goodell is vaccinated and cleared to hug whoever he wants. So yay for that. And
so relieved.
It's going to be a good time. We talked about a lot of 19 to 23-year-old men tonight.
And we even talked about one tight end.
Hey now.
Actually, 3.
A couple tight ends.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
D wild. So we'll definitely be back after the draft. We might divide it up. These have been pretty long. Maybe after the draft, we'll do 2 teams at a time.
Yeah.
So you can expect probably the Steelers and the Ravens to be divided, since those are our passion project teams. Those are the ones that we love with our hearts. Mm-hmm. And then they'll each be paired with an Ohio team that we, sometimes you don't choose who you love.
Yeah. We begrudgingly take in as our own.
I like it.
The poll is up for the championship round of our soon-to-be May Madness tournament. Jim Brown and Joe Green. It's a classic Clash of the Titans for AFC North all-time supremacy. So go vote. Let your voice be heard. Rock the vote. Vote or die. All that fun stuff.
You really can't go wrong unless you make the wrong decision, and I think it's pretty clear.
I already voted, and you know who I voted for.
I have an idea.
Not a Steeler. I would love
Lame.
to listen to like Locked On Steelers podcast, but to be honest, like it repulses me to listen to people that like root for the Steelers talk about rooting for the Steelers.
Well, it's hard. It's hard for a guy like you who's got this little baby franchise that's had its amazing moments where you're like, oh, you're on a bicycle with training wheels for the first time, and it's so exciting. And then you look at like a fully grown and, and beautiful being that you're just like, wow, they've really come into their own for real. And you just want to be that. I get it.
Yeah,
And
just
maybe
not
you
in
will
the
someday.
last 10 years.
10 years is but a blink of an eye for a team with an actual history.
It's time to put the Steelers in a home.
It might be. I hope not.
Yeah, it might be there soon. Anyways, we're just like rambling and talking shit to each other, and we're coming up on 2 hours. So everybody enjoy the draft on Thursday night, the 29th of April at, I believe, 8, maybe a little earlier. Don't trust me. And yeah, have a fantastic week, and we will see you after the draft to tell you how fucking rad the Ravens are and how the Steelers stink.
Rashad Bateman, future failure. Put him on the pile.
Yeah, add him to the list. Travis Taylor, Mark Clayton.